Hey guys, tonight we journey into the heart of a perfect American suburb, a place where the biggest drama is usually who won Yard of the Month. We'll explore a crime so clean, so devoid of clues, it was like the killer was a ghost. But as you and I know, every ghost leaves a trace, and sometimes that trace isn't found in a fingerprint or a fiber, but in the frantic, unexplainable bark of a dog in the middle of the night. This is a story about how 2 decades of silence were shattered by a sound most of us just find annoying. So you probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. The next time a neighborhood dog starts barking, you might not be so quick to dismiss it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for a little fun, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a profound and unsettling silence. The year is 2004. The place is Ashton Creek, a pristine collection of cul-de-sacs and 2-story homes where the grass is always green and the secrets are buried deep. This is the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows everyone's business, or at least they think they do. And at the heart of it, in a charming blue house with a garden that could make a professional botanist weep with envy, lives Eleanor Vance. Eleanor is 48 years old, a local librarian who knows the name of every child who comes in for story time. She's quiet, kind, and single, a life she seems to embrace with a serene contentment. Her neighbors describe her as the bedrock of the block, the one who remembers your birthday, brings you soup when you're sick, and whose prize-winning roses are the talk of the town. She is, by all accounts, a woman without a single enemy in the world, which makes the scene on Tuesday, May 4th, all the more impossible to comprehend. The mail carrier is the first to notice something is wrong. 2 days of mail are crammed into Eleanor's box, including a circular for a lawn care service she would never need. It's a small detail, but in a world as orderly as Ashton Creek, it's a blaring alarm. He alerts a neighbor who uses the spare key Eleanor gave her for emergencies. The door swings open into a house that's perfect. Too perfect. The air is still, carrying the faint, pleasant scent of lemon polish and dried lavender. Sunlight streams through the spotless windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Nothing is out of place. The throw pillows are fluffed on the sofa. A book, a classic novel, rests on the ottoman, a delicate ribbon marking the page. It's a portrait of peaceful domestic bliss. But there is no Eleanor. The first responding officer, a rookie named Miller, steps inside, his boots hesitant on the gleaming hardwood. His eyes scan the living room, the dining room, the kitchen. Everything is immaculate. No shattered glass, no overturned furniture, no sign of a struggle. It's as if the owner simply vanished. Then he sees it. On the floor, just inside the entryway, is a single, out-of-place blemish. It's a footprint. His instinct is to get closer, maybe even touch the edge of it to see if it's wet. But his training partner, a veteran sergeant, grabs his arm. "Don't you dare. You're not just in a house anymore, kid. You're in a crime scene. Everything you touch, everything you breathe on can compromise the case." This is the first lesson in the rigid protocol of chain of custody, a documented trail that proves every piece of evidence has been handled correctly from the moment it's found to the moment it's presented in court. One wrong move, one ungloved touch from Officer Miller, and the only clue they might ever find could be thrown out by a defense attorney years down the line. The sergeant directs him to secure the perimeter while forensics is called in. The house is methodically searched, and in an upstairs bedroom, they find her, Eleanor Vance. She's in her bed, the covers pulled up neatly to her chin. She looks like she's sleeping, but her skin is waxy and cold, and the life has long since left her eyes. The medical examiner would later determine the cause of death was asphyxiation, yet there are no ligature marks on her neck, no bruises on her wrists, no sign that she fought for her life. It's a chilling contradiction, a violent act carried out with almost a tender care. It's the first great irony of the case. The killer's meticulous neatness is the very thing that makes the crime so loud. The footprint, becomes the focal point. It's the one mistake in an otherwise flawless execution. And here's the truly bizarre detail. It's not from a shoe. It's a barefoot print left in what appears to be mud from a garden. It's large, a man's foot, but the print is strangely shallow, as if the person was trying to walk lightly. Who breaks into a house, commits a murder, and does it all in their bare feet? The investigators are stumped. They run the print, but find no matches in any database. They canvass the neighborhood, but no one saw or heard anything. Eleanor's life is an open book, and every page is clean. This is where the first major schism in the investigation occurs, a debate that continues in cold case forums to this day. Experts still argue whether Eleanor's killer was a ghost, a forensically aware stranger who got lucky, or a trusted acquaintance. One camp believes it was a professional, someone who knew how to leave no trace, but made a single uncharacteristic error with the footprint. The other, more unsettling theory is that it was someone Eleanor knew, someone she willingly let into her house, someone whose presence didn't alarm her. This person, this friend or neighbor, betrayed her trust so completely that she never even saw it coming. The lack of a struggle, they argue, isn't the sign of a skilled killer, but a sign of a trusted friend. As the days turn into weeks, the case grows colder. The pristine house offers up no more secrets. But then, tucked away in the back of Eleanor's closet, inside a locked hat box, detectives find a small, leather-bound journal. After getting a judge to sign off on a warrant, they pry it open. They expect to find gardening notes or book club musings. Instead, they find the quiet librarian's hidden fear. The last few entries, written in a cramped, almost frantic script, speak of a growing paranoia. She writes about feeling watched, about the shadow that falls over the garden when the sun is high. She never names a person, but she describes a chilling, obsessive presence that has stolen her peace. The woman, who presented a face of serene contentment to the world, was, in her final days, living a secret life of quiet terror. The perfect victim, it turns out, had a secret after all, and it died with her. For 20 years, that is where the story ends. A baffling murder, a single bare footprint, and a diary that whispered of a shadow, but never gave it a name.
20 years is a long time. It's long enough for a rookie cop to become a seasoned detective, for a pristine suburb to show its age, and for a ghost story to become local folklore. The murder of Eleanor Vance becomes the Ashton Creek mystery, a cautionary tale parents tell their kids about locking the doors. Her blue house still stands, owned by a succession of families who know its history but feel disconnected from the tragedy, like living in a historical landmark. The barefoot footprint was never matched. The diary's shadow was never identified. The case file, thick with dead ends and unanswered questions, is moved from a metal cabinet to a dusty box in the cold case archives. The silence that fell over the neighborhood on May 4th, 2004, settles in for the long haul. Until Buster arrives. Fast forward to the present day. Mark and Sarah Henderson are the new faces on the block. They bought the house 2 doors down from Eleanor's old place, drawn in by the same promise of quiet suburban life that tempts so many. They have a young daughter, a mortgage, and a brand new rescue dog, a scruffy terrier mix named Buster. Buster is the epitome of a second chance dog. Found wandering near a highway, he's a little shy, a little skittish, and overwhelmingly gentle. He flinches at loud noises and prefers a warm lap to a game of fetch. In the peaceful, predictable world of Ashton Creek, he should be in heaven. And for the first month, he is. Then, the barking starts. It's not the typical yapping of a bored dog. It's a frantic, desperate, and relentless sound that cuts through the neighborhood's tranquility like a chainsaw. And it's strangely specific. Buster ignores the squirrels, the mail carrier, even the cat that taunts him from across the street. His attention, his entire being, is focused on one thing: the property of their next-door neighbor, Mr. Arthur Finch. Arthur is a neighborhood institution. A retired accountant in his late 70s, he's lived in his immaculate beige house for over 40 years. He's a man of routine and precision, and his garden is his masterpiece. Where Eleanor Vance's garden was a thing of natural beauty, Arthur's is a work of geometric perfection. The lawn has ruler-straight edges, the hedges are perfect cubes, and his prize-winning roses are legendary. It's the kind of yard that makes you feel guilty for your own weeds. Buster's barking is aimed squarely at Arthur's roses. Every evening as the sun begins to set, the dog stations himself at the fence line, his body rigid, his eyes locked on a specific patch of deep red roses near Arthur's back patio, and he barks for hours. Mark and Sarah are mortified. They try everything: citronella collars, ultrasonic trainers, high-value treats to lure him away. They hire a dog behaviorist who suggests anxiety medication. Nothing works. The moment he's able, Buster returns to his post, a furry, four-legged sentinel on a mission no one understands. Of course, Arthur Finch is not pleased. He complains, first with polite, tight-lipped notes left on their door, then with passive-aggressive comments over the fence. Finally, he confronts Mark directly. "Your dog is a menace," he says, his voice thin but sharp. "There are laws, you know, nuisance ordinances. I have a right to the quiet enjoyment of my property." This isn't an empty threat. Most suburban communities have strict rules about noise, and a formal complaint could lead to fines, mandatory mediation, or even a court order to have the animal removed. The Hendersons, who moved here for peace, are now at the center of a neighborhood dispute, an ironic twist that sees their dream life souring before their eyes. Here's where it gets truly strange. Mark, a patient and observant man, starts to notice the unusual detail in Buster's obsession. The dog doesn't just bark at the garden in general, he barks at one specific rose bush. It's the largest one, a grandiflora with blooms the color of dried blood. Buster ignores every other plant, every other corner of the yard. It's just that one spot. Why? What could possibly be so interesting about a rose bush? Mark's a logical guy, an engineer. He thinks about pests, maybe a gopher or a nest of rabbits under the roots that only Buster can smell. But the behavior feels too intense for that, too meaningful. This leads to a fascinating and often controversial legal question. Experts still argue about the evidentiary value of an animal's behavior in a criminal investigation. A trained canine that alerts on a scent is one thing. Its reactions are quantifiable and admissible in court to establish probable cause. But a pet? A rescue mutt with a mysterious fixation? It's legally worthless. You can't put a dog on the stand, you can't cross-examine a bark. And yet, history is filled with anecdotal cases where an animal's strange behavior provided the crucial first breadcrumb that led detectives to a hidden clue or a body. Is Buster just an anxious dog? Or is he a witness, trying to communicate something he can sense, but that humans can't? It's the ultimate form of hearsay, a testimony from a witness who can't speak our language. The pressure from Arthur mounts. The threat of legal action hangs over the Hendersons. Sarah wants to rehome the dog, a heartbreaking but practical solution to restore peace. But Mark can't shake the feeling that they're missing something. He looks at Buster, a creature they saved, and wonders if, in some bizarre way, the dog is now trying to save them or someone else. One night, standing in his dark kitchen, he watches Buster at the fence line, barking with that same desperate intensity. He looks past the dog to the perfect, manicured lawn next door. He sees Arthur Finch's silhouette in the window, watching them, watching the dog. And for the first time, Mark doesn't feel embarrassment or frustration. He feels a cold, prickling sense of dread. The barking isn't just noise, it's an accusation. And Mark is starting to believe he needs to find out what it's about. The tension on the cul-de-sac thickens like the humid summer air. Arthur Finch's polite notes have been replaced by the sterile letterhead of a local law firm, officially notifying the Hendersons they are in violation of Ashton Creek's municipal code. The letter mentions fines and potential civil action. The peace they sought has curdled into a low-grade war of attrition, waged across a meticulously maintained property line. Sarah is at her wit's end, the dog's barking a constant soundtrack to her anxiety. To her, it's simple. Buster's behavior, whatever its cause, is threatening their home. But for Mark, The dog's fixation has morphed from a nuisance into a puzzle he feels compelled to solve. He can't let it go. It's the engineer in him, the part of his brain that sees a problem and needs to understand its mechanics. His obsession begins to mirror the dog's. During the day, while at work, he finds himself sketching the layout of the two houses, the fence, the exact location of the rosebush. He researches canine olfactory senses, learning they can detect smells up to 40 feet underground. Could Buster really be smelling an animal den under Arthur's prize-winning flowers? It seems plausible. He even considers the bizarre possibility of a water pipe leak, the smell of which might be agitating the dog. He is grasping at straws, trying to find a rational explanation for an irrational behavior. This is the first ironic twist of this chapter. In trying to solve the mystery of the dog, Mark starts acting just as strangely as Buster, alienating his own wife in the process. One Saturday morning, after another sleepless night thanks to Buster's frantic serenade, Mark decides he has to act. He can't dig in Arthur's yard, that's trespassing and destruction of property, but he can observe. Armed with a pair of binoculars from his birdwatching phase, he sits in his upstairs office, which offers a clear, slightly elevated view of Arthur's backyard. He feels ridiculous, like a character in a cheap spy movie. He watches Arthur tend to his garden. The man is a portrait of geriatric precision. He wears khaki pants, a crisp white shirt, and supple leather gardening gloves. He snips, he prunes, he fertilizes, and Mark notices something peculiar. Arthur gives loving, detailed attention to every single plant in his yard, except one. He never touches the big red rosebush. He weeds around it, waters near it, but he never prunes its branches or deadheads the spent blooms. For a man obsessed with horticultural perfection, it's a glaring omission. It's like a world-class painter leaving one corner of his masterpiece unfinished. That evening, Mark waits until well after midnight. The neighborhood is dark and silent, save for the hum of air conditioners. Buster is finally asleep, exhausted, at the foot of his bed. Adrenaline thrumming, Mark slips out his back door, armed with a small garden trowel and a flashlight. His plan is foolish, impulsive, and almost certainly illegal. He's going to dig. Not a big hole, just enough to see if there's a nest, a burrow, anything that could explain the dog's behavior. The legal principle at play here is trespass to land, a civil tort, but also potentially a criminal offense. If caught, he could be sued by Arthur and arrested by the police. He's risking a criminal record over a dog's bark and a hunch. He slips over the low fence like a teenage delinquent. The grass on Arthur's side is unnaturally soft. He moves to the giant rosebush, its dark red blooms looking black in the moonlight. He kneels down, the wet dew seeping into the knees of his jeans. He pushes the trowel into the soft loam soil. It sinks in easily. He digs, scoops, and sets the dirt aside on a small tarp he brought. He digs for 10 minutes, his heart pounding with every rustle of leaves. He finds nothing. No tunnels, no nests, just dirt and roots. Frustrated, he pushes the trowel in deeper with more force. The sound is sharp, metallic, and completely out of place. It's not a rock. He freezes, listening. Silence. He carefully scrapes the dirt away from the source. His fingers brush against something cold and hard. It's a box, a metal box, about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in the thick plastic sheath that has been sealed with duct tape. It's heavy. This isn't a gopher. This isn't a water pipe leak. This is something someone buried, something someone wanted to keep hidden. And here we find another layer of irony. Mark, the logical engineer, set out to find a rational explanation for his dog's barking to appease his neighbor. Instead, he's unearthed a secret that will do the exact opposite. He has stumbled upon a time capsule, but one not filled with childhood trinkets and hopeful letters. The contents of this box will not bring nostalgia. They will bring a reckoning. He knows, with a certainty that chills him to the bone, that he should not open it. He should call the police. But the part of him that climbed the fence, the part that needed to know, is now screaming at him to see what's inside. The legal debate here is fascinating. Experts still argue whether evidence obtained through illegal activity like Mark's trespassing can be used to restart a cold case. Under the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, any evidence gathered as a result of an illegal search is typically inadmissible in court. However, there are exceptions, like the inevitable discovery rule, which suggests that if the police would have eventually found the evidence through legal means anyway, it might be allowed. Did Mark's illegal dig just jeopardize the entire 20-year-old case before it even had a chance to be reopened? He doesn't know any of this. He just knows he's holding a secret. He carefully refills the hole, packs up his tools, and slips back over the fence, clutching the heavy, mud-caked box to his chest. Back in his garage, under the sterile glare of a single fluorescent bulb, he peels away the plastic and the tape. The box is an old military-style ammo can, rusted at the hinges. He pries it open. The smell that wafts out is musty, the scent of old paper and stale air. Inside, nestled on a bed of yellowed newspaper clippings, are not the bones of an animal, but the bones of a long-dead secret. He sees a small, leather-bound journal, a single dried rose, and a Zippo lighter with a faded engraving. He picks up the journal. On the first page, in a familiar, elegant script, he reads the name Eleanor Vance.
The sight of Eleanor Vance's name sends a jolt through Mark. This isn't just a neighbor's buried keepsake. It's a piece of a murder. The air in his garage suddenly feels heavy, charged with the weight of 2 decades of silence. He stands there, the ammo box open on his workbench, a Pandora's box of cold case evidence. His first thought is to call the police. It's the right thing to do, the only thing to do. But a sliver of doubt, sharp and cold, holds him back. He just committed a crime to find this. He trespassed, he dug, he stole what is technically Arthur's property. Will the police see him as a concerned citizen or a bumbling criminal who just contaminated a pristine 20-year-old crime scene? He carefully closes the box, his mind racing. He needs to think, to strategize. He can't just walk into the police station and dump this on the front desk. He needs to be smarter. The next morning, he makes an anonymous call to the Ashton Creek Police Department's non-emergency line. He uses a voice-altering app on his phone, feeling both foolish and terrified. He reports suspicious digging in Arthur Finch's yard, suggesting it might be related to the old Vance case. He gives the location of the rose bush, but says nothing about the box he's holding. It's a calculated risk. He's planting a seed, hoping a clever detective will be assigned to it. Someone who will take it seriously enough to get a warrant and discover the box legally. It's a desperate attempt to launder his own illegal act, turning the fruit of his poisonous tree into something the justice system can hopefully use. The call is routed to the cold case unit, which in a small department like Ashton Creek's consists of one part-time, semi-retired detective. But in a stroke of luck, that detective is on vacation. The call is instead picked up by a young, ambitious detective named Isabella Rossi. Rossi is new to the division, hungry to prove herself, and fascinated by the psychology of old, unsolved crimes. An anonymous tip about a 20-year-old murder is exactly the kind of puzzle she craves.
Most cops would dismiss it as a prank or a local crank, but Rossi has an instinct for the threads that other people miss. The mention of the Vance case, a legendary local failure, piques her interest immediately. Rossi pulls the original case file. It's a mountain of paper, filled with dead-end interviews and forensic reports that lead nowhere. She spends 2 days absorbing every detail, her modern perspective clashing with the 2004 investigation. She reads about the perfect house, the victim who looked like she was sleeping, and the single bare footprint. She reads the original witness statements, including one from the next-door neighbor, Arthur Finch. His statement is brief, almost comically so. He was home all night, he heard nothing, saw nothing. He describes Eleanor as a lovely woman and a talented gardener. It's a perfect, unhelpful, neighborly statement. But Rossi notices something that the original investigators, focused on finding a violent intruder, missed. It's an unusual detail buried in the minutiae of the file. The original investigators had taken soil samples from the muddy footprint found in the entryway. The lab analysis showed it was standard, loamy soil, rich in organic matter, consistent with a well-tended garden. But it also contained trace amounts of a specific high-nitrogen fertilizer brand, a brand popular with rose enthusiasts. At the time, this was dismissed. Eleanor had a garden. The killer likely walked through it. But Rossi cross-references this with the crime scene photos. Eleanor's garden, while beautiful, was known for her wildflowers and native plants. She practiced organic gardening, eschewing chemical fertilizers. Her prize-winning plants were hydrangeas and azaleas, not roses. The roses, the famous roses of Ashton Creek, the ones that require that specific fertilizer, belonged to Arthur Finch. It's the first tiny crack in Arthur's folksy, harmless old man facade. Fueled by this discrepancy, Rossi dives deeper into Arthur's life. On the surface, he is squeaky clean. A retired accountant with a modest pension, no criminal record, not even a speeding ticket. But then she stumbles upon a sealed court record from 1998, 6 years before the murder. It's a real legal event, a restraining order. It wasn't filed in Ashton Creek, but in a neighboring county, by a woman who had briefly worked with Arthur at his accounting firm. The woman accused Arthur of stalking, of sending her unwanted gifts, including chillingly single red roses, and of creating a climate of quiet intimidation. The case was eventually dropped when the woman moved away, seemingly terrified, but the petition itself paints a picture of a man capable of obsessive, unwanted attention. The wolf, it seems, has a history of wearing sheep's clothing. Now, Arthur Finch is no longer just a grieving neighbor. He's a person of interest. The anonymous tip about digging in his yard suddenly has context. But Rossi is smart. She knows she can't get a warrant based on a 20-year-old soil sample and an anonymous call. This is where the debate over probable cause versus reasonable suspicion becomes critical. Rossi has a strong suspicion, a powerful gut feeling backed by circumstantial evidence. But probable cause, the standard needed for a judge to sign a search warrant, requires more concrete facts. It's a higher legal bar. Experts still argue where that line is drawn. Is a decades-old fertilizer match and an old stalking complaint enough to justify a search of a man's home and property? A cautious judge might say no, fearing it violates the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches. Rossi decides to play the long game. She starts by doing a knock and talk, a voluntary interview. She finds Arthur in his garden, meticulously trimming his hedges. He's polite, charming, and seems concerned when she brings up Eleanor's name. He leans on his cane, his eyes watery with what looks like sad nostalgia. He retells the same story he told in 2004. He saw nothing, heard nothing. But Rossi, armed with her new knowledge, watches him with different eyes. She asks him about his roses, and he beams, launching into a detailed explanation of their care. He is the master of his domain. But when she casually asks him about the large grandiflora bush near his patio,
the one Buster barks at, a flicker of something crosses his face. It's a brief, almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw. That one, it's a stubborn one, never blooms quite right. He lies, turning away. It's the second ironic twist. Arthur, the master of precision and control, tells a clumsy, obvious lie about the one thing in his yard he can't seem to control, the secret buried beneath it. Rossi leaves with a smile, but her instincts are screaming. The wolf is not just in Gardner's clothes, he's hiding something in the garden itself. And now, she just needs to find a way to legally prove it.
Detective Rossi returns to her office, the image of Arthur Finch's subtle flinch burned into her mind. She has the puzzle pieces, but they're scattered and don't yet form a picture clear enough for a judge. She has the fertilizer discrepancy, the old restraining order, and a strong gut feeling, but it's not enough. She needs something more, something that connects Arthur directly to Eleanor in the days leading up to her death. She turns back to the original case file, to the one piece of evidence that has always been the most tantalizing and the most frustrating, Eleanor's journal. The journal found in Eleanor's closet was analyzed back in 2004, but its secrets remained locked away. The problem was that Eleanor, a librarian and a woman who loved classic literature, didn't write in plain English. She wrote in a complex, self-devised shorthand, a mix of literary allusions, botanical terms, and what appeared to be a modified version of the Dewey Decimal System. The original investigators, lacking the tools and expertise, had deemed it indecipherable. It was logged into evidence as an anomalous personal artifact and largely ignored. For Rossi, this uncracked code feels like a direct challenge. She believes that giving Eleanor her voice back is the key to solving her murder. She submits a formal request to have the journal re-examined, citing the new potential person of interest. This time, instead of just a department analyst, she gets approval to send it to a specialized FBI unit in Quantico that handles historical and non-standard cryptography. This is a real law enforcement practice. The FBI's Cryptalysis and Racketeering Records Unit, CRRU, employs a team of cryptologists, linguists, and puzzle solvers who tackle everything from gangster ledgers to terrorist communiques to, in this case, a librarian's cryptic diary. It's a slow, painstaking process. They use pattern recognition software, frequency analysis, and good old-fashioned human ingenuity. While the cryptologists work, Mark Henderson is living in his own private state of suspense. The ammo box is hidden in a locked tool chest in his garage, a constant, heavy presence in his life. The anonymous tip seems to have worked. He's seen a police car drive slowly down their street twice, but nothing has happened yet. His relationship with Sarah is strained. He's been distant and secretive, and she knows something is wrong. The final ironic twist for Mark is that in his quest to solve one problem, the dog's barking, he has created a much larger one that now isolates him from his own family. Buster, for his part, is still barking, a furry, four-legged reminder of the secret Mark is keeping. Weeks pass. Then Rossi gets the call from Quantico. They've cracked it. The key, they explain, was realizing Eleanor wasn't just using one code, but layering 3. The Dewey Decimal numbers corresponded to specific books in her personal library, the botanical terms were metaphors for people, and the literary allusions set the emotional tone. It was a diary designed to be unreadable to anyone but herself, and the final entries are a bombshell. The cryptologists provide a full translation. The shadow that falls over the garden that the original investigators found so poetic was not a metaphor for a general feeling of dread. It was literal. Eleanor was writing about her neighbor, Arthur Finch. She nicknamed him the Gardener. The journal details a slow, creeping escalation of intrusive behavior. It started with him leaving perfect roses on her doorstep, which she found unsettling. Then he began offering unsolicited advice on her garden, criticizing her organic methods as chaotic and unproductive. He would stand at the fence line, just watching her for hours. She writes, "The gardener tends to his rose, but his eyes are always cultivating mine." The most damning entry is the last one, dated the night before she was found. It reads, "The gardener was angry today. He said my hydrangeas were a disgrace. He brought over a gift, a lighter. He said I needed more light in my life. I was polite, but I put it away. He frightens me. His smile is like a neatly pruned hedge, nothing wild or real behind it. He said he would come back tonight to help me organize my thoughts. I will lock the doors, but I fear the shadow has already taken root in my house. Rossi's blood runs cold. It's a voice from the grave, a clear and terrifying narrative of psychological intimidation. The mention of the lighter is the odd specific detail that makes it all real, a Zippo lighter. She frantically searches the original evidence logs. Every item from Eleanor's home was cataloged. Dozens of books, knickknacks, kitchen utensils, but there is no mention of a lighter. It was never found. This proves two things. One, Eleanor's journal is credible as it mentions an object no one else could have known about. And two, the killer likely took it with him. This is the moment the entire case pivots. Experts still debate the ethical lines of posthumous privacy. In cracking Eleanor's diary, has Rossi violated her ultimate right to be left alone, to have her private thoughts remain private? The legal concept of standing usually means you have to be alive to claim your rights were violated, but the philosophical question remains: does our right to privacy die with us? Or does the need for justice for a victim override any secrets they took to their grave? For Rossi, the answer is clear. Eleanor wasn't just writing a diary, she was documenting her own murder before it happened. Armed with the decoded journal, Rossi now has more than enough for a warrant. The diary provides a direct, credible link between Arthur and Eleanor, establishes a motive of obsessive control, and mentions a potential piece of evidence, the missing lighter, that could serve as a trophy. The anonymous tip about digging, the 20-year-old soil sample, the old restraining order, it all clicks into place. She drafts the affidavit for a search warrant, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She is no longer just a detective with a hunch. She has a voice from the grave, guiding her straight to the wolf's door. The shadow is about to be dragged into the light.
The search warrant is signed by a judge before lunch. The element of surprise is crucial. Rossi assembles a small team, briefing them on the situation. The suspect is elderly, a seemingly frail man in his late 70s. But the journal paints a picture of a manipulator, a man of quiet, simmering rage. They can't afford to be complacent. As they drive towards Ashton Creek, Rossi feels a familiar electric hum of a case coming together. This isn't just about closing a file. It's about delivering justice for Eleanor, whose voice has been silenced for 2 decades. They arrive on the quiet cul-de-sac in the middle of the afternoon. 2 patrol cars seal off the street, a move that sends ripples of alarm through the neighborhood. Curtains twitch. Mark Henderson, working from home, sees the flashing lights and his heart leaps into his throat. This is it. The chain of events he set in motion is finally reaching its climax. He watches as Rossi and 2 other plainclothes detectives walk up Arthur Finch's perfectly manicured lawn and knock on the door. Arthur answers, holding a book, a pair of reading glasses perched on his nose. He looks more confused than alarmed. "Detectives," he says, his voice steady, "is there a problem?" Rossi doesn't mince words. "Mr. Finch, we have a warrant to search your home and property in connection with the death of Eleanor Vance." The color drains from Arthur's face. The book slips from his fingers, landing with a soft thud on the welcome mat. The mask of the harmless old man has shattered. For the first time, Rossi sees the flicker of fear she'd been looking for. The search begins. It is a slow, methodical process governed by the strict legal principle of scope of warrant. The warrant specifically allows him to search for items related to the murder of Eleanor Vance, including gardening tools, clothing, and any personal effects that may have belonged to the victim. This means they can't rummage through his financial papers or read his personal mail unless it's directly relevant to the case. Any evidence found outside the specified scope could be suppressed. The team sweeps the house, which is as obsessively neat and orderly as his garden. Every book is perfectly aligned on its shelf. Every piece of furniture does free. It's the home of a man who craves control. One team starts on the garden, heading directly for the large red rosebush. They dig carefully around the spot Mark had indicated in his anonymous tip. Within minutes, they find the disturbed soil and the empty hole where the ammo box used to be. Arthur, watching from his patio with 2 officers, says nothing. His silence is more incriminating than any denial. Meanwhile, Rossi directs the search inside the house. They are looking for a weapon. but the ME report suggested smothering, possibly with a pillow. Finding a specific pillow after 20 years is impossible. What they're really looking for is the trophy, the lighter. They search his bedroom, his office, his closets. Nothing. It's all too clean, too sterile. It's the same frustrating perfection that characterized the original crime scene at Eleanor's house. This is the first ironic twist of the section. The very neatness that first made Arthur seem innocent is now what makes him look so guilty. It's the tidiness of someone with something to hide. But as the search stretches into its second hour, a sense of frustration begins to build. What if the lighter is long gone? What if he threw it away years ago? Then, in the back of a hallway closet, tucked away on the top shelf behind a stack of old board games, a young detective finds a small, ornate wooden box. It looks like a humidor for cigars. It's not locked. He opens it. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, is a single object, a silver Zippo lighter. It's tarnished with age, but on one side, an elegant EV is engraved. Eleanor Vance. This is the unusual detail, the smoking gun they've been searching for. The trophy kept from the crime, a secret reminder of his power, hidden in plain sight. The discovery of the lighter presents an interesting legal challenge. Experts still debate the concept of trophy taking in profiling non-serial offenders. While serial killers are famously known for keeping souvenirs to relive their crimes, it's less documented in cases of single victim murders committed by someone known to the victim. Does the presence of the lighter prove Arthur is a cold-blooded, predatory killer, or could a defense attorney argue it was simply a forgotten gift, as Eleanor herself mentioned in her journal? The context of the murder makes it a powerful piece of evidence, but its psychological meaning would be a fierce point of contention in any future trial. With the discovery of the lighter, Rossi now has the physical evidence to corroborate the journal. She walks out to the patio, holding the lighter in a clear evidence bag. She holds it up for Arthur to see. "We found this in your closet, Arthur. Eleanor's journal mentioned you gave her a lighter. Funny how she never got a chance to use it." Arthur Finch stares at the bag. His carefully constructed world is collapsing around him. The garden, his house, his routines, all violated. He looks from the lighter to Rossi's face, and his expression changes from fear to something else. Something cold and hard. He seems to be calculating, his accountant's mind weighing the evidence against him. He straightens up, his frailty falling away to reveal a rigid spine. The second ironic twist is a confrontation itself. Rossi expects a confession or a denial. Instead, Arthur gives her a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. "You have no idea what you're talking about. That woman was a chaotic, sentimental fool. She deserved to be organized." It's not a confession to the act, but it's a full-throated confession to the motive. It's the voice of a man who saw a human being as a messy problem that needed to be tidied up, permanently. The wolf hasn't just been unmasked, he's baring his teeth.
Arthur Finch's chilling statement hangs in the air on the patio, a confession of motive wrapped in the language of contempt. She deserved to be organized. It's the key that unlocks his psychology. For him, this wasn't a crime of passion, but an act of correction, a tidying up of a world he found unacceptably messy. Rossi has him now. The journal, the lighter, and his own damning words form a triangle of evidence that is closing in on him. He's arrested on the spot. The sight of the elderly man, the neighborhood's master gardener, being led away in handcuffs is the final, shocking scene for the residents of Ashton Creek, the last chapter in a ghost story they never thought would have an ending. In the interrogation room, Arthur is a different man. The folksy charm is gone, replaced by a cold, intellectual arrogance. He waives his right to an attorney, a move that is both incredibly foolish and perfectly in character. He believes he is smarter than everyone in the room. This is the first ironic twist. His own hubris becomes the prosecution's greatest asset. He thinks he can outwit them, talk his way out of a 20-year-old murder. He begins by admitting he was in Eleanor's house the night she died. He claims he went over, as he had told her he would, to, quote, help her. He saw the state of her house, the books not alphabetized, the garden a, quote, jungle, and it offended his sense of order. He spins a narrative where he is the victim of Eleanor's chaos. He talks about her wild garden as if it were a personal insult to his own structured existence. The barefoot footprint? He explains it away with unnerving calm. He had been gardening, and he took off his muddy shoes at her door as a courtesy. He saw her sleeping, he says, and he simply covered her with a pillow to, quote, make her more comfortable, to, quote, quiet the chaos. It's a sanitized, psychopathic version of events devoid of remorse or humanity. He doesn't see it as murder. He sees it as bringing order. The case, however, hinges on more than his twisted confession. The real legal event that seals his fate is the forensic analysis of the ammo box Mark found. Even though Mark had opened it, the lab is able to lift a partial fingerprint from the sticky residue of the duct tape used to seal the plastic sheath. The print is a perfect match for Arthur Finch. This evidence proves he was the one who buried the box, connecting him not just to the items inside, but to the act of concealing them. It corroborates the entire narrative, from his initial obsession to his long-term cover-up. But a question remains, the final puzzle piece that has been nagging at everyone, including Mark, who was watching the news reports with a mix of relief and dread. Why was Buster barking? What was it about that specific spot? The box was empty. The items from it were in Arthur's house. This leads to the ultimate, unusual detail of the entire case. On a hunch, Rossi sends the soil samples taken from beneath the rosebush for a more advanced chemical analysis. The results are baffling. The soil has an unusually high concentration of phosphorus and calcium, far more than any fertilizer could account for. But there's more. It also contains trace amounts of embalming chemicals, specifically formaldehyde. The lab technician is puzzled. It's almost as if cremated remains had been mixed into the soil. This is where the final, unresolved theory emerges. Experts still argue about what the dog was truly sensing. Was it the lingering scent of death from the buried box, or was it something else entirely? Rossi, haunted by the chemical report, develops a chilling hypothesis. Arthur's obsession with Eleanor didn't end with her death. In his twisted mind, he wanted to continue to organize her, to care for her. He had her Zippo lighter, her journal, but what if he wanted more? It's a known fact that Arthur's wife passed away a few years after Eleanor's murder. He had her cremated. The theory, too dark to ever be proven, is that Arthur, in an act of ultimate control and grotesque reunion, had exhumed his own wife's ashes and mixed them into the soil beneath the rosebush where he had once buried his secrets about Eleanor. A bizarre, macabre shrine to the two women whose lives he sought to dominate. Was Buster, the gentle rescue dog, not barking at the memory of a murder, but at the desecrated grave of another woman? A silent victim whose final resting place had been defiled? In a final interrogation, Rossi confronts Arthur with this theory. For the first time, he breaks. His cold composure cracks and a raw, guttural sob escapes him. He doesn't confess to it, but his reaction is telling. The man who craved order above all else had created the most chaotic, profane secret of all. The final crushing irony is revealed. Everyone thought the dog was barking at the secret of how Eleanor Vance died, but it's possible he was barking at the secret of what Arthur Finch did next. The bark wasn't an echo of a 20-year-old crime, but an alarm for a continuing, hidden desecration. Mark Henderson, the man who started it all, finally understands. He hadn't just unearthed the murder, he had stumbled upon the abyss of a man's soul. He goes home, sits on the floor, and wraps his arms around Buster, the dog who saw a darkness no one else could, and barked until someone was finally forced to look. The story of Arthur Finch and Eleanor Vance serves as a chilling reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not the ones who leap out from the shadows, but the ones who live right next door, tending to their gardens. Their evil is not loud and explosive, but quiet, patient, and meticulously organized. It reminds us that peace is a fragile veneer, and that sometimes the only thing standing between a hidden crime and the light of day is the inexplicable, persistent instinct of an animal who senses that something is profoundly wrong. Justice for Eleanor was delivered, but the case leaves us with the unsettling knowledge that some secrets are buried so deep, we may never truly know the full extent of the darkness that lies beneath the roses. Thank you for joining me on this journey tonight. Your presence here, sharing these stories with me, means more than you know. It's through remembering these cases that we honor the victims and keep their stories alive. If you found this narrative compelling, a simple like or a share goes a long way in helping this community grow. And as always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part of this story will stay with you? Until next time, be safe, check your locks, and maybe give your own pets an extra scratch behind the ears. You never know what they know.